Hello, everybody, and welcome to another DeepSEO Conference webinar. I'm Steve Grinzer, and the guy up there on the top left is Doc Sheldon. Today we are talking with Bill Hartzer about SEO and domain names and the various ways those could affect you, and maybe even touch a little bit on the recent GoDaddy drama where, things went horribly wrong at GoDaddy if we have time for it.
Sure.
Bill owns and runs Bill Hartzer Consulting, or Hartzer Consulting, and he's also the what do we call it? The data scientist over at DM Protect. So he's a couple levels smarter than the rest of us. So it's always good to hear what he has to say. Bill, how you doing?
Doing well.
Awesome.
So a little bit, I guess, about my background. I mean, I've been doing SEO, SEO before it was SEO, back in the last century, which was back in, late 90s and so forth. And
web positioning.
I sold my first domain name back in 1998. And so, but, I've been dealing with SEO and domains and about a lot of blogs over the years, been several different SEO agencies. Around 2016 I went out on my own, and then and about 2 years ago I've started a company called DN Protect, which protects domain names. We also deal with a lot of stolen domain names as well, and where we're recovering stolen domain names and dealing with issues. So I've done, where I like to actually mention, I think that a lot of people might be interested in here, related to, domains and so forth. I mean, we started back originally with the, the exact match domain names, where it was key, if you had, redwidgets.com, then, you were given some kind of, essentially more brownie points for having, redwidgets.com, and it would rank better. And I don't recall actually off the top of my head the actual date, but I remember it was a Saturday morning, about 8:30 or so, and I got a call from an SEO client, and his rankings had just tanked. And that was the time when they did basically the EMD update.
Right.
And you can go back, years, you go back and see all the records of what the fallout of that and what it all really meant. But basically what it was, where they were at, Google was actually giving essentially, a better credit, if you will, if you had an exact match domain name. If you had redwidgets.com, you actually could rank better.
Right.
And then was given some extra, page rank or brownie, whatever it was. And basically when they did the EMD update, that actually stopped giving that credit. That's really the only thing that happened.
Right. I know.
So
back then, actually, we used to laugh and talk about, how many hyphens could you get away with in a domain name before you were considered keyword spamming in your URLs.
Sure. I remember some domains that I came across one that an expired domain that had 26 words in it.
Good Lord.
And it was something like I mean, it had all of the words from stocks to stocks hyphen MySpace hyphen, all the keywords of the day were all stuffed in there.
So that was more like an exact match paragraph.
Yes, definitely. But it was interesting, that particular domain had nothing. None of the keywords were related to each other. They were all just just words, popular words thrown in there. So I have seen, yeah, exactly. So fast forward a little bit more, then we had, 20, it was on 2013 or so, we had the new TLDs come out. And now we're up to about, I think there's about 850 that are live, where you had, keyword, and things like, one of the domains I tested early on was 3carat.diamonds. And what I did is I took 3carat.diamonds and put up a landing page on there, and then also bought 3caratdiamonds.com. Ran a bunch of PPC ads. The only difference was, the domain name versus, with the ad, the ad copy, the landing page, everything, the keywords I've been on were all $1 a click. So in fact, when, we went through that and wanted to see if in Google Ads, whether or not the domain name was any different between one or the other, just because they were very new. So in fact, bidding $1 a click, spent about $10,000, and we ended up seeing that the .com cost 86 cents per click on the average, and the .diamonds was 46 cents a click. So we got a lot more for our money because the quality score was higher with the .diamonds domain. So since then, what I've realized is you actually, whether or not, even if you're using a .club or a .for sale or a .xyz, if you use something other than a .com, your quality score ends up being higher. And so you will pay less per click. And so you get more for your money. So if you spent $10,000 at $1 a click, you'd pay, like I said, you'd spend 86 cents on a .com per click and 46 cents on average for a whatever.
That's a substantial difference. That can definitely.
It is. And so it is, and I've tested it, with, it over the years, and it just continues to be like that. And so if you had, an e-commerce site, for example, and sure, it is on a .com, it may be worth it to actually set up some landing pages on, if you're selling diamond engagement rings online, get a .diamonds, put a landing page on there, and essentially filter the traffic over, maybe put a shot, have a landing page, and then this is the way, I've been doing it with this diamond retailer, and they sell diamond engagement rings, and we basically have it on a .diamonds. We have the landing page set up. All the PPC traffic goes to that landing page on the .diamonds. And essentially the shop now and the navigation basically brings them over to the .com. And as far as the PPC costs, we've been basically able to cut it in half, over the, past 4 or 5 years using that method, using a .diamonds versus a .com. They've built other sites also, on the .diamonds, but they continue. This particular retailer continues to have their, use their the .com. But so looking at these TLDs, one of the tests that I ran about a year ago was to basically set up. I took the top 15 TLDs, based on number of domain registrations. And so there's actually, it's interesting because you can just as a reminder, you can go to the NTLD stats, and you can actually see ntldStats.com, and it will show you a live view of how many domains have been registered at different top TLDs, which ones are the most popular, and .xyz and .icu, and based on number of domain registrations. So basically took the top 15, .icu, .top, VIP and some others, and then threw in, got con.net.org, some CCTLDs like .co, .co.uk, and so forth. Set up 15 sites with nonsense content on them, okay? And essentially wanted to see which ones, and each one had a, 20 is a 25-page site. Each one had a keyword, a nonsense keyword that we targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So we read it. So basically, set up the sites and measured crawling and indexing rates and actually rankings for the keyword. And the word, it was a nonsense word, so we used the nonsense word NOCS, Noxaman. Noxaman.top, Noxaman.com, .net, .org, and so forth. So that keyword also was only in the domain name. Okay, so this test kind of allowed us to, for the SEO side, to test a lot of things. The crawling and indexing. So all of these 15 sites, in fact, we had submitted them in Google Search Console, basically is at the same time, as fast as I could type them in, and copy and paste them. Within 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, we had every single page on the .xyz was crawled and indexed. After 4 or 5, so that one in particular, when it come down to the .com, the .net, the .org, some of those sites, even though they were in there at the same time, and essentially had the same starting point, some of them took 3 or 4 days to get crawled and indexed, and versus the XYZ, which was crawled and indexed within a few hours.
Wow. So
definitely have seen, Google for some reason really love crawling and indexing .xyz domains now. Overall,
it
rankings,
makes you wonder. It makes me wonder, and it's pure conjecture, but could it be, for instance, that Google has earmarked certain bot networks for crawling to certain TLDs? So that here's a new TLD that is less populated. So, that would seem like that might explain why they would get crawled faster. But who knows?
Yes, it's very possible. As far as rankings go, the .net blew everything away, and the .net always, and ranked better. And even 8 months later, the .net ranked better for its fictitious keyword plus, the domain in the URL the keyword in the domain. So what's interesting is none of these sites, had this fake keyword, that was only in the domain name. Okay. And so there's two things we can see from that is that, that fake keyword that's only in the domain name, we know if you went to Google and typed in that keyword, you could see the rankings. And the .net being, always ranking higher than the others. There were no links, there were no, anchor text links, there was no, and that keyword never appeared on the website. So we know that Google reads the keyword in the domain name, and they do something with that. We know they read it. We know also that they read the ending as well. So if you have, you search for, if you have, real estate for sale, and, they are reading the word real estate and they're reading the word for sale. We could search for, Noxaman, which was the fake keyword in the domain, Noxaman space club. and noxaman.club would rank number one. So, we know that Google's in particular is reading the keyword in the beginning of in the beginning of the domain and at the end of the domain. Same thing with searching for keyword space com or keyword space club or keyword space ICU or keyword and so forth. We know there's an association there. How much weight or not, we don't know. But we do know that they are reading the word, in the domain.
Oh,
Another thing that, go ahead.
We're seeing something similar with the Google My Business or Google Business Profiles. I'll never get used to this.
Sure.
Where the domain names seem to make more of a difference at the local level as well. When you're doing local services for a specific city, if you can get your city name and your service in the URL, it really, especially like in real estate, it gives you that leg up in a real estate search versus the big players, the Zillows, the Trulios, and Realtor.com. It at least gets you an opportunity to get in the map pack better, which is unusual because they keep saying domain names don't matter, but obviously they do. At least in certain.
Yes, definitely, and I see the same thing. I have a client, an online reputation management client that came to me, a month or 2 months ago. Celebrity that came to me and said, well, she doesn't really like the results that are showing up. And she was it was interesting because she wasn't really concerned about Google. She was concerned more about Bing and Bing's results, because actually Google's results looked pretty good compared to Bing. And so literally in that case, buying hername.com and .net and .org and putting up websites. Bing certainly loves the essentially what I did is I set up a site with using a there's a site, this person does not exist. Mm-hmm. So it's an AI generated face and person, and essentially created a whole persona of a person
right.
around that domain name, and that ranks very, very well in Bing. And so Bing really seems to like and give a favorable result to the exact match or the keyword in the domain. And it goes back, the same thing with companies, even if it's just use your companyname.com, there's a good chance, if you are such and such, systems.com, and use your company name, you're going to rank for your, unique company name. I think there's a benefit there to having, your companyname.com. Same thing, obviously, with, for your own personal reputation, obviously, getting, DocSheldon.com, BillHartzer.com, and so forth, and at least putting up a page or a small site on there, definitely, is a positive thing. I talk a lot to college students who are, different internet marketing classes, and one of the recommendations I have, you're starting out, you need to start thinking about your reputation online when potential employers search. You've got to get your name.com, because that's going to give you a leg up, especially if you connect your social accounts and your LinkedIn and so forth to your name, that you're going to be able to control those results. And I'm amazed also about even how many celebrities and so forth just do not claim their knowledge panel in Google. They haven't done that. They have not, they don't have their own .com name, they have not taken control essentially of their search results, which obviously they could easily do.
Obviously, there's the branding benefit of doing that, but there's also the insurance benefit of keeping some ne'er-do-well from grabbing your name and painting you with all kinds of stuff. That's just putting a target on your back.
Well, I mean, that's what's happening is that as SEOs, those celebrities are actually coming to us, coming to me, coming to other friends of mine to fix all those issues. Once there's something, I mentioned in the news that they don't like, now they're having to fork out a fair amount of money to essentially fix the results. Yeah. And that's you need to be on the offensive rather than the defensive, essentially. And there's some there are some that get it, and then there are some that not that don't, and they don't like some kind of photo or video that's showing up, and they just want to get that, or news article or something, and they want to get that pushed down.
All right.
So one more thing as far as that that SEO and domains test is that I know a lot of sites use the .co because they have not they're not able to get the .com or so they'll use the .co. And what's interesting is that there are certain ccTLDs like .co. Google actually even they actually consider that .co to be in Spanish. That's the default. Mm-hmm. And because it's actually a ccTLD for Colombia, and so many sites in the U.S. do use the .co, and in English, and they really have to you have to actually go above and beyond to use href lang tags and the language tags to actually specify that it's in English. And so it's interesting because this 25-page site, which was essentially Latin type of nonsense content, Google never even looked at the content. They just said, okay, this is in Spanish, and put up and when you see the search results, you have to translate it, and they assumed it was in Spanish. Well, it was nonsense content that was not in any language, and so they just they just assumed that it was in Spanish. So, just from the get-go, so there's a lot of things that would kind of can lean from that that we've gotten and results from that particular test.
Very cool. I wanted to ask you a little bit about before we get too close on time here, been trying to pay a little more attention to what's going on with DN Protect and domain names. We've had a couple of clients, not so much recently, but I've seen clients who've lost their domain names because their web developer registered it and then vanished or for whatever reason. And so you've got the issues of just losing them because nobody renewed them, and then they get snapped up by somebody who collects old domain names to profit off of or just to hold. And then of course you've got the other side where people are just straight up stealing domain names, and GoDaddy still seems to be about the worst for allowing that to happen. And so I wanted to learn a little more about the DN Protect side of things and how you can secure your domain a little better and things like that.
Sure. So, obviously, the basics come down to, a lot of it is, who has access to who has access to the domain registrar account. And, we're seeing things like ex-employees or IT administrators leave, but they'll take the domain and with them when they leave, which really is stealing a domain. It is a company asset. And just because you have access to the user ID and password of a domain registrar account, it doesn't mean that you can go in and transfer the domain to yourself. And it is, so that's more of a, civil issue. Unfortunately, there are certain registrars that will not, will not police that, as if the, if it essentially comes to, like, for example, there's been several cases that we've dealt with that in particular that if somebody has, let's say, an employee, and the employee has basically just gone in, and when they got fired, they took the domain and the GoDaddy account and changed it right before they left or after they left the company, and took the domain and website and everything. In that case, there's like GoDaddy's essentially says to the client or the customer, or the company, they essentially say, well, that you knew, or who the person is who's essentially stole your domain, that we're not going to get involved, and the only way we'll make any changes is if we have a U.S. court order. And so so certainly I am doing, we have a case that just came in and, to me about an hour ago, and the same exact thing. It involves a different registrar, but an ex-employee who was the IT or the administrator of domain and website. And we left, he took the domain, the domain and website with him. And basically the only thing at this point is really, you got to file a police report. So the company is filing a police report in their local jurisdiction so that they have that documentation. And then DN Protect as a third party, basically can take this, this police report and show it to the ex-employee and say, look, there's now, this is, officially a theft, and we are we're urging you to do the right thing and give it back, and let's resolve this. The next step then there are court file. We have domain attorney on staff, and so we can actually do it. Court filing, U.S. court filing, UDRP, domain disputes, and so forth. We did have a case that I resolved that took 3 weeks. Unfortunately, it took 3 weeks, but it was with GoDaddy, plain and simple. And they had an IT company in Orlando, had 50 client sites, some of them very large sites, and the server got hacked, and they got access to the root of the server, someone from out of the country, and just started transferring domains to several different registrars outside of GoDaddy. And there were at least 6 or 7 different registrars. They had access to the server so that they could reply to emails, for example. Mm-hmm. They could, and turn off the two-factor authentication and so forth. But they had access to the emails on the server. So in that particular case, we basically stepped in, and I was able to, with my contacts, I have certain contacts at most of the domain registrars, at least the ones that get domains, transferred to them that are stolen. And in those cases, within an hour, we're able to get, the domain locked down and taken care of. I'm just still amazed that it took 3 weeks to get all the 50 domains back to the owner. It took 3 or 4 days to get him back. It was a GoDaddy hosted server. So it took 3 or 4 days for them to get access back, give him access back to his own server. And then the last domain was, even though the other registrars were good about getting everything returned, there still has to be among registrars when a domain is stolen. If it's stolen from GoDaddy and transferred to Two Cows or so forth, then Two Cows has to sign an agreement with GoDaddy, an indemnification agreement that basically says that, yes, this is stolen and we're transferring it back, and there's not going to be any legal protections later on, because we're transferring it back to you, and so forth. So it took GoDaddy 3 weeks to sign those agreements to get the domains back.
It takes them that long just to answer the phone, though. The customer service is not high on their list of priorities.
Yeah, so sometimes there's, you kind of look at it and say, okay, well, it may, there's certain, we may hear about more domains stolen or more accounts compromised with GoDaddy because, of the sheer number of domains and customer accounts they have. But at the same time, we've had, issues with other registrars from, Network Solutions. We're still dealing with, Network Solutions had a breach probably 5+ years ago, and they're still on the dark web. There's still user IDs and passwords floating out there that somebody could get access to. They just, it's here, so somebody has not changed their user ID and password since the hack. And so basically they're able to just go in and get these names and access the accounts and just transfer them out. So there's two other issues that we've had. One is actually where somebody will, so if someone hacks into a registrar domain account, whether it's Network Solutions or GoDaddy or wherever it is, and they transfer it to another registrar, then there basically is a record of who the person is who stole the domain, because somebody knows, who has the domain now, whether it was stolen and transferred to somebody in China. The person, in China, there's a name or there's some account there that is, potentially. Well, what's happening now is people are going into domain, go into a GoDaddy account, a Uniregistry account, a Network Solutions account. They'll go into the account, and instead of transferring it, they'll actually just delete the domain. So when you buy a domain name, if I can go into my account and I can say, oh, well, I don't want this anymore, I can just delete it out of my account. Well, actually, it then becomes available. And so then anybody else can come and pick it up. So then there's, so what's happening is thieves are going into your account and deleting the domain. They're the only ones that know that, well, it's now available. So then they can go and register it. And so it doesn't look, it stops kind of that record of, they can say, well, now, I just happened to see that it was available, so I registered the domain.
Yep.
I didn't necessarily steal it, but I did that.
And you say that it becomes available. Is that an almost immediate thing, or does it take a couple, 3 days, or?
It depends on the registrar. Some of them are, in some cases they're fairly quick. And, then somebody, and we're dealing with a case. I'm dealing with a case now almost 6 months back and forth it's taken, where somebody bought a domain name for $5,000, okay, back in 2020. And, it's a pretty valuable domain, but, he paid $5,000, on domain auction or something. He bought the domain and he renewed it for 5 years. So if you look at the WHOIS record on the owner, the ownership, we can look back. We can look back on the domain history of who owns domains. and all the changes. If you look back, that domain is actually renewed till 2025, which now is in the future. Well, somebody went in and hacked into his account and deleted the name. And so you can see in the history that it was renewed till 2025. But now all of a sudden it was just deleted for some reason, and then someone instantly bought it the same day that it was deleted.
Yes.
So why would somebody pay $5,000, renew it, for $10 a year for 5 years in the future, and then delete his own domain? It does not make sense whatsoever. Somebody hacked into the account or got into his account, disabled the two-factor authentication, deleted the name, and then bought and went ahead and registered the domain. And so, there's we're everything from dealing with a couple of different domain registrars and the legal aspects of it and getting everything. There's police reports involved that have been filed, and documentation and everything. So we're still dealing with that, and that's happened more than once. So finally, so there's a very interesting case that came up today that I really actually wasn't really aware of, but it is actually a loophole that people are taking advantage, or thieves are taking advantage of. And it's kind of a DNS hack. So let's say you use Cloudflare, okay? And I use Cloudflare on a few sites. So essentially what, Cloudflare, if you don't know, it's Cloudflare is essentially a filter. So you own and you host your website at wherever your AWS or wherever your web host is, and you have your domain at GoDaddy or Network Solutions or Epic. Okay, so what happens there is that you change your name servers so that they point to Cloudflare. So when the internet traffic comes in, it goes through Cloudflare and says, okay, Cloudflare says, is this a bad bot, or is this a human, or is it real traffic? So they kind of filter out, and then they cache your page from your server. So you get the benefit of filtering out bad bots, and you get the benefits of caching and so forth. Great. Well, what's happening is that the thief will go and look at all of the domains, and you can see this in the DNS checkers. You can see every single domain name that is pointed to a Cloudflare name server. There might be 1,000 different domains. What they're doing is they will take that list, and they'll take that list and add that list of domains to their account. Well, what's happening is someone will point their domain to Cloudflare, but they will forget to add that domain in their account. And so what's happening is that domain is pointed to Cloudflare, but it's in limbo. It's not assigned to an account. So the thief then basically takes that list and see which ones are not assigned to accounts. So they literally can take control of the DNS of the domain and point it to wherever they want to. They can point it to their own web server. They can point it to somewhere else. They can point it. They have access to the mail records and everything. So they're completely getting control of your domain. So in this case, this customer came to us and said, "What's going on here?" Well, all of a sudden, we have this happening. And so after the investigation, after I looked into everything, it turns out that they had a list of 50 or 60 domains that they own, and they pointed them all to they did a copy and paste and pointed all to their name, the Cloudflare account, but there were a few that were left off. And so somebody else came and added those domains to their Cloudflare account and completely could control over over this company's website and so forth, and through the DNS, and pointed it to somewhere else.
That's Innovative.
So it's
You got to give them credit for that.
Yes. So unfortunately, the problem is that based on DNS records, you and I can look up all of the domain and get a list of all the domains that are pointed to Cloudflare's name servers, and literally just do a copy and paste and see which ones are available, and just literally take over domains that
Well,
way.
it seems like it would also be very simple for the CDNs to simply require an account attribution before they let you finalize the transfer. Make that a required step.
That right now is currently a loophole, and has been with Cloudflare. And it's not only just Cloudflare. There are multiple services like that. That you have the case where some expired domains or some domains on GoDaddy's name server or GoDaddy's auctions that are, or any of these domain auctions. The name servers don't change when the domain is transferred, so it may be still left over and still pointed to Cloudflare or to MaxCDN or any of these others. And they're certainly taking advantage of that. And in theory, that is the start. Once they have control over the DNS, then they have control over the mail for that domain. So then they can essentially steal the domain as well.
Sure.
There is I could go on for hours, but there's a very public case that went through a UDRP domain dispute. Airbnb owned tilt.com, okay? And they had that domain for years. Well, in the Whois record, it still had an email address of customtilt.com. And in the Whois, well, somebody went and bought customtilt.com, and then they were able essentially to steal tilt.com from Airbnb because that email address, customtilt.com, was in the Whois record of tilt.com, but they bought the domain and they were able to steal it that way. That went through a UDRP domain dispute process, and it was found that that the domain was not was actually not given back to Airbnb. That the thief actually continued to have that domain.
Wow.
So there's, you really have to be watching your Whois records. Make sure you have access and so forth, because we have ex-employees, we have others who just gain access through different means, and a lot of these cases, none of them are the same. A fair amount of them are. You do renew your domain for several years. Just because you don't get an email saying that you need to renew your domain is not an excuse that you need to renew your domain. Some people say, come to us, say, we didn't get the email to renew. Well, that's not, necessarily a reason. You just, renew it for 10 years. Epic.com has a deal. You can renew your domain forever. They're the only ones you can pay, $300 something and one time, and Epic will renew your domain forever. It's a forever registration. So anyway, so
it's a tough issue with a lot of clients, because I know most of my clients are just barely computer literate. They know enough to know that they need a website, they need a domain name, and relying on them to handle those types of accounting issues is high risk.
Yeah.
But then again, I also don't want to be the guy that has to renew these forever. Like my sister-in-law has a couple of companies, and I manage all of her stuff because I know that it's going to not get renewed if nobody else does. Otherwise, so it's a tough situation for a lot of clients to be in, because they simply don't think about it.
No, and one of those things that, unfortunately, if you lose your domain, you lose your email, you lose everything. And we're all constantly looking at our websites. Oh, well, and adding word fence and all the security on our sites. And, we're not, and we're concerned about somebody hacking into the site. Well, you should actually be more concerned, about the domain security, and making sure that everything's up to date and who has access, that two-factor authentication. The way right now, the best way to lock down your domain, I can tell you, and from my experience of all these stolen domains and issues, is is to use actually a physical key, and YubiKey, YubiKey. YubiKey offers a USB key, also a Bluetooth and MSC chip, okay, with their physical devices, and Google Advanced Protection. You can lock down your Google account, and you can buy a YubiKey, $50, and you get a USB NFC chip and a USB key. And basically, any authenticator app, you can add that YubiKey to. So essentially, when you log in, to a registrar that offers, the authenticator app, you can connect your you can be required to put in your USB key into your laptop, or press the button on your Bluetooth and device, this little thing that goes on your key ring, and you can to be able to log in, and you can connect those to any authenticator app like Authy or Google Authenticator or so forth. And so that's the extra protection, because the with GoDaddy's, I understand, and several registrars, they only offer the right now the 2FA, which is either send you an email, which can be compromised, or you can or send a text message, and that text message also can be compromised.
Yeah.
So that's really the only way is with that, those physical keys to lock down. If you're managing any Google Ads accounts, you're connected through a Google Ad, your Google account, Google Advanced Protection, $50, and they'll send you those USB keys and the Bluetooth and NFC chip, and they do some additional behind the scenes. They do some additional things like, there are certain apps that they will not allow you to connect to your Google account because of the fact that they're not secure enough. And so there's, they look at your IP address more. So that's what all the Google employees are given is these YubiKeys. That's what I have all my Google accounts on, and it's been great. I have not had any issues for a couple of years. And I've gotten now my son, who has, who does gaming and so forth, and his accounts are, have been, compromised, his Google accounts over the years. And so, what, we're doing the YubiKey, and we have not had any issues.
Wow.
Good to know.
That's
some interesting stuff, Bill, and definitely some things to be aware of and concerned about. I agree 100% with what you're saying. That it seems foolish to worry about your site getting hacked when you could have the ownership of your site totally taken away from you. That needs some
Sure.
attention. And I know.
And if there is an issue, it's, even if you have control, like I said, we're not talking about, worst case, best case scenario, you'll get your domain back in 2 or 3 days, which, can be a hassle for an outage. Worst case scenario, we're talking about 6 months to a year or more. We're still dealing with legal issues from some domains that way.
Sure,
So,
and if you've got 100 employees and your payroll, your cash flow is tight, that can put a company under real quick.
Yes, exactly. It has.
Wow. All right. Wow. That's a lot of information. Obviously, we could run these for hours and go deeper and deeper into this.
Sure. Yep.
I think the most important thing we need to get everybody to understand is just how important thinking about security is all the way through the process.
Yeah.
From
security, and really, it comes down to SEO. There are, like it's mentioned, your domain name does matter, and it's something that can cause somebody to click or not to click, on that search result, but depending, so click-through ratios, where people talk about that related to SEO and rankings and so forth, and all that. So your domain name does matter, and it's all connected. It's all interwoven into into SEO, digital marketing, and domains, and so forth.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap it here. We're racing towards an hour now.
Yep.
I think what we'll do is, like with Kim Krause, there's always new developments coming down the pipe in these areas, and we may have to circle back around here in 6 months or so and kind of see where the world's at. So thank you again, Bill. It's been wonderful having you on here. I've taken a whole page of notes because there's always something to learn. I hope everybody else enjoys the show. And if you have any questions, reach out to Bill, or you can reach out to me and Doc, and we can reach out to Bill, however you want to do this.
Yep.
So
that's great.
Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Bill. It was very informative.
Sure.